bienvenue, willkommen, bienvenidos a my channel. So this is my first video ever, so excuse me if it's super awkward. I am just by myself in my house, super bored. This is probably the billionth channel to come out of quarantine. But yeah, I thought today I would do something that kind of combines the things that I really enjoy, which is makeup and books. So I wanted to create a makeup look inspired by a book cover and then talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah, let's get into it then.
Yeah. Just to preface this, I'm not a makeup expert. I've only been doing makeup for around 2 years and really just on myself. Most of the stuff I've learned from YouTube. So yeah, it might not be perfect. This might be a mess, I don't know, hopefully not. But yeah, I think it'll be fun and I think it's cool, you know, to sort of take a book and do a look inspired by it. So the book I'm doing today is Amor Towles, A Gentleman in Moscow. So I kind of dressed up a little bit for it. I don't normally just dress like I'm going to like a wedding when I'm in my house by myself. But I thought today, you know, we're doing a book about a gentleman, so I would dress up and play a part, kind of. So yeah, all of the products that I'm going to be using are going to be down in the description. I don't think I'll be talking really about them because it's not really like a review. So yeah, I'll probably talk about what I'm doing while also talking about the book. It might be confusing, so maybe I won't be doing that. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, I'm gonna talk about a book and I have it right here. So like I said, this is A Gentleman in Moscow. It's missing a bit because I left it with my dog for like 2 minutes, and when I came back from literally getting the laundry to maybe 10 minutes of that, he decided he was gonna eat my book. So I think that means he liked it. Good reviews. No, but in all seriousness, so A Gentleman in Moscow is written by Amor Towles, as I was saying. Amor Towles is actually an American author. He grew up in Boston, and he was actually, even though he studied English, he did work in financial investing, which I think is really interesting because I have a bachelor's in English and creative writing, and I am awful at math, and I don't understand anything about finance, so it's interesting to see that there are people who can sort of combine the two, because usually, I don't know, I don't want to generalize, but in my experience, math people and English people are very different. So yeah, so he was doing that for many years, and recently he transitioned into writing full-time, so he lives in Manhattan now with his family. His first book is called Rules of Civility, and so I haven't read that one. I do have it on my bookshelf at work. I work at a bookstore, so it'll definitely be something I'll be looking into soon. That book received a lot of awards, and A Gentleman in Moscow also received a lot of great reviews. It's a bestseller. So was his previous book. Thanks to like preface this book, I loved this book. I fell in love with this book, and I actually, okay, before I get into the book, so the cover, honestly, it's one of those covers that doesn't really say anything about the book. You know, you just see a guy standing in a doorway. So it wasn't like a book that I was pulled to because of the cover, which can happen a lot, especially working at a bookstore. You see a lot of things, you're like, this is pretty, what's it about? But that was not the case with this book. I actually was intrigued by the title. I don't know what it was. It's such a simple title, but I think simple titles can be effective. I mean, it's been proven before. You know, we have Jane Austen with books like Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion and Emma, and you have Dostoevsky with Crime and Punishment and all that type of stuff. So I don't think a title needs to be super intricate, but the part that got to me was, you know, Moscow. Since I've been young, I've had like the weirdest obsession with Russia. I don't know where it came from. I grew up in Puerto Rico, lived there most of my life. I've never been to Russia. I really want to go. I'd love to go to St. Petersburg. It looks absolutely beautiful, but I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening outside. I think they're mowing the lawn. That's weird. Maybe it was I don't know. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, St. Petersburg. I'd love to go to St. Petersburg someday. But yeah, I've been really, really fascinated by Russia, Russian language, Russian culture, their food, everything really. I've just been really interested in it. Their history, of course, which is fascinating. So yeah, if I see anything related to Russia, I'm like, I want to know what that's about. So I picked up this book, and you know how books do that annoying thing now where like there's not a blurb in the back anymore. I think it's on the inside. Nope, that's about Amor Towles. So yeah, there's not really any information on like what this book is about in the dust jacket, which is super fun. But yeah, all you have is like this little blurb at the top that just says, "He can't leave, you won't want to," which sounds really ominous. So I didn't know what this book was about already, and then I was like, is this like kind of like a mystery or like something spooky? I didn't know, but I wanted it, and so I got it. But yeah, so I actually really fell in love with this book. I don't tend to read a lot of modern literature. I'm working on getting better about it, and I think that's a good reason to start this channel, because, you know, I love the classics, but, you know, it's not like there's already not been 1,000 things said about whatever, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, or Crime and Punishment, or War and Peace, or whatever. So, you know, yeah, maybe I should. I'm working on reading more modern books, and so, yeah, I really liked this book. I think the writing might feel very pretentious to people who are not used to or who don't like sort of older styles of writing, which is kind of how I write. And I've definitely gotten like that critique before, that it just sounds very like pretentious and very like old-timey, which doesn't necessarily work unless you're doing a period piece. And even then, you know, some people just really don't like that style of writing. So that is something to beware of if you don't like that type of writing. I don't know if this book is going to be for you, but it's funny, and it's so charming, and it has that characteristic that almost feels like an old Russian novel. Like, if you can see, I don't know how well you can see these, but I have Crime and Punishment right here. And as pretentious as it sounds, that is my favorite book. I read that book in like a week and a half, and I was obsessed with it. Absolutely in love with it. And what I love about Russian novels is that they're, even in translation, they're so authentically Russian. You know, they'll keep words, or they'll keep like traditions, and you don't feel like, oh, somebody took this book and just like translated it into like America and American culture, or like British culture, which is a thing that is done. I guess I'll say I also have a master's degree in translation studies, so I kind of know some of the stuff that does go on with translations and a lot of the issues that come with that. But we're not talking about Crime and Punishment today, and we're not talking about translation, but I just want to say that I love how like authentically cultural they are. And I think somehow, even though, well, Amor Towles, you know, he knows a lot about like Russian history, but being an American, he managed to really capture that sort of writing style, and I loved it. Like, I would say this is like one of my favorite books for sure, like top 5 maybe even. And I don't say that normally about newer books. It's not that I don't like them, it's just that I don't click with them in the way that I've clicked with like more classic works. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about the author, a bit about the book, a bit about my background with how I came upon this book. Yeah, other than that, it was just really popular at the store because it was a bestseller, and I don't know if it made it onto like Oprah's book club thing, but it was a bestseller. It was a New York Times bestseller, and everyone was coming in for it. People are still calling, looking for it. So yeah, when I saw this on the shelf, I was like, I need to get one. I think there were maybe 2 copies in there, and I was like, I need to get this because I know it's here today and it's gonna be gone tomorrow. So yeah, that's the story about the story, I guess. Well, a story about my story with the story. So yeah, I think A Gentleman in Moscow actually takes place in Russia, obviously, in Moscow, and it's in 1922. So taking us back to the Roaring 20s. which I guess is kind of topical because we're in 2020 and we're kind of, well, we were hoping to relive that era, but we're reliving the plague instead, I guess. It's not funny. But yeah, takes place in 1922 in Russia. So when the book starts, it actually opens up with a poem. The poem was in the book. The poem is attributed to our main character, Count Alexander Ilyich Rostov, and so he is a count. Wow, I'm saying so many revelations here. So he's, you know, kind of part of the aristocracy, the elite of Russia. And so this is during the time of the Bolsheviks, so of course, you know, communism and aristocracy aren't things that get on real well. So yeah, kind of tense there. Not a fan of each other. But yeah, so it starts off with this poem and attributed to the Count. And so then you go into like a trial, which I think is a fun way to start a book, is like in the middle of the action. Personally, I'm sorry, I can't see myself very well because I normally wear glasses, so I have to get up close because I can't see what I'm doing. Genius over here. But yeah, so I think it's interesting that it starts with a trial, because it puts you right in the action in a trial. So the Count is being tried by the Bolshevik because essentially this poem, they're saying it kind of incited a bit of rebellion, so it's kind of like, you know, treason and espionage and that type of stuff. And, you know, normally people would have been exiled. Maybe they were murdered, but I'm not sure, and I don't want to make that assumption because that's very rude. So yeah, in the book, they say, you know, normally they'd be exiled, but instead what they decided to do was to basically put him on like a permanent house arrest. So they do that. However, the Count doesn't live in like a normal house. He actually lives in a hotel, which apparently is a thing, or at least it used to be. I don't know if it is anymore. I don't know if people live in hotels. Must be nice. You know, room service and all that stuff. Expensive though, very expensive. But yeah, so he lives in a hotel called the Metropole, which is essentially the setting for the entire book because he's on house arrest, so he can't leave. And this is like a very fancy, like this is not like, I don't know, a Motel 6 or like a Holiday Inn or something. This is a 5-star hotel. Like this is a classy establishment. Sorry, my face is really red because I was blow drying my hair earlier, so all the heat like just went right into my cheeks and they look very red. But yeah, so he lives in this 5-star hotel called the Metropole, which is like right across from the Kremlin. And so that's where he is going to spend the rest of his life. Now, honestly, as someone who lives in not a super ritzy, I mean, it's not a bad place, but it's not like a 5-star hotel. But you know, since we're all kind of on house arrest right now anyway, basically, I think a 5-star hotel is not the worst place to be stuck in for the rest of your life. I did see a video actually reviewing this book. In fairness, when, you know, you are an aristocrat and you're used to very lavish living and you're used to sort of like always being out and about and stuff, yeah, being stuck in the same place for the rest of your life, not very fun. And in fairness, he does get like sent up to, they call the belfry, it's like the attic, I think, of the hotel. So he does have to leave like his fancy schmancy suite and go live in a much smaller room. So essentially they're like, okay, we're gonna take you to the hotel, the Bolshevik are, like the guards and stuff, whatever they're called. They are like, yeah, we're gonna take you to your room, and essentially you can only take with you what's gonna fit up there, which not a lot for somebody who's super rich and now lives in an attic. And it wasn't like the full attic, like it was, from my understanding, it's like this teensy tiny room. He ends up like breaking through a wall, and then like I think he covers it with his like his wardrobe. But yeah, before that it's just a tiny room, so he has to, he's talking about all these things he has, and everything in his room has sort of sentimental value because they're heirlooms. So I know he ends up taking like a desk and this really long book of essays that was like super convoluted, and he's kind of struggling with it throughout, because he's like, he sits down to read it and it's kind of like, you know, when you're reading something that's just really like dense and like written in a way that just is too much jargon or too like fancy to a point where like your brain can't even comprehend what's happening. One of those books. He takes that. I think he takes like a cuckoo clock he had, I think. Or maybe he takes that later. I know the clock ends up in the room anyway. And he takes a portrait of his sister, who had passed away actually when they were younger. So she's kind of like this like shadow character, I guess. I don't know what the word for that is in like English. In Spanish, I know we used to talk about like personajes siluetas or personajes sombra. It's like shadow characters, I guess. I don't know what the English equivalent for that is. So yeah, so there's her presence is kind of like throughout, like he'll think about her or she'll like come up in conversation because he has like a giant portrait of this lady, his sister, in his room. And yeah, I would think that if you have a giant portrait of someone in your room and you know no one's ever seen you with that person, it's gonna, I wouldn't say it's gonna raise some eyebrows. People are gonna be like, oh, who's that? Is that like your mom or something? So yeah, that is a thing that happens. So yeah, so now he's kind of shoved into this teensy tiny room up in the belfry, and it's tough for him. It really is. He's had to like give up all of his possessions and, you know, a lifestyle in which you're used to always being around people. Again, much like us right now. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm used to being around a lot of people, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to say. Like, whatever. He's like a socialite, essentially. It's like if somebody put a Kardashian on house arrest and they were like, yeah, you can't talk to anyone else. You can, but you know, you don't have that same like going out kind of thing. So yeah, so he can't really leave the hotel. But again, it's not that bad. The hotel has like a barber shop that he ends up making like a standing weekly appointment with, so he gets like his hair cut every week, and I think he gets a shave. And he can still like use all the facilities, and there's like these two restaurants, one especially called the Boyarsky, which will play a super important part later on. And yeah, there's like a bar and ballrooms and stuff, so, and there's like, of course, activities going on in the hotel, so it's not like he's entirely like left to his own devices with like nothing to do. It's kind of cute. He like has there's like this cat around the hotel, and he like talks to the cat sometimes, so it's kind of funny because they have like a little bickering, and the cat's cliche judgmental cat, so it's really cute. Like I said, it's quite lighthearted, and just very charming and very cute. But yeah, so a point I wanted to make was about what life is like in the hotel versus Russia. So I thought it was really interesting. He did something, the writer did something really interesting, in which you have this very lavish hotel where people, you know, live there, and they have like these great meals, and they drink wine all the time, and it's always a party, and there's all these things going on. And on the outside, you know, there's all this like turmoil going in Russia, and a lot of that comes through an old friend of the Count's. His name is Mishka, that's his nickname, which is very common in Russian literature, and I think just in Russia, is to call someone by a nickname. So yeah, a lot of it comes through his character, who's kind of involved in like party activities, and he's in charge of like writing this well, not writing, but collecting all these letters by Chekhov, and that plays an important plot point later. But I'm gonna try and focus on his story. There are like a few B plots that I'll probably mention, but I don't think I'll go super into detail with it. I want you guys to be able to enjoy that, and I don't entirely want to spoil the book. But yeah, there's spoilers. I should have said that before. I'll probably put it in the title, so you might have already seen it somewhere. But yeah, so it's really interesting then to have sort of this turmoil going outside, and then the niceness of the hotel, but also there's turmoil in the Count's mind. He struggles a lot with his mental health throughout this, which I think is quite, I mean, it's relevant in general, but especially now. I know it's kind of a really hard time for people who already struggle with loneliness and anxiety and depression, and then you're like shoved into this imposed isolation, and you're just you and your thoughts, and it's already hard enough to get through days sometimes with those. So I relate to it for people who are struggling with it. This will hopefully, you know, be over soon enough, and just hang in there. Find good books, find good movies. If you have someone you can like video call, do that. But yeah, I'm sorry that you're kind of forced to be alone with your thoughts and struggle with that. But so the Count, going back to the story, sorry, that got serious weirdly. The Count does struggle with his mental health while he's stuck in the hotel. So I think it's really interesting to have that sort of storyline in there, I guess, because it does come up a few times where he's like struggling with wanting to live. Excuse me, that's my dog barking. Not that I don't like it, I just think I want to do like a really kind of light-ish look. I said I was going to talk about the look and then I forgot. So now that all the basics are done, I guess I'll do that. So I kind of wanted to go with the color scheme of the book, which is quite monochrome, but then sort of incorporate that sort of like pinkish color in the title, and then include some like gold type stuff, since it's a gentleman and it's a 5-star hotel, and sort of have that elegance of the 20s. So it'll be interesting, but I do want to keep it, I hate saying that I'm going to keep it light because I know what I'm going to do, and part of it is you're going to be like, what? Does it go with this dress? The eyes do. I don't think the lips will. But anyway, so that's why I'm not going to be doing contour, because I want to keep it really light, and I think contour can be quite harsh. I mean, that's the point, obviously, is to have all these angles and these shadows, and yeah, that's just, I feel like whenever I do contour, it just looks like I'm going to do like a very like punk rock kind of look, which is cool, but not what we're going for today. I keep saying that, and then I think of what I'm going to do, then I'm like, I don't know, maybe. But anyway, not doing contour, just gonna apply some blush now. So yeah, so the Count kind of starts off having a daily routine, which, like I said, does involve like a weekly haircut, and Jesus, that is a lot. You know, he eats every day at the restaurants at the hotel, and he tries to read his book and stuff. So it's a whole thing, a whole process that he goes through. I am such a professional. All of my makeup is on the floor. It's fine. No one comes in this room, and I just cleaned it, so it's fine. Yeah, so he develops his own like little daily routine, and so during this daily routine, he actually meets this very, very cute character. I really, really liked her. I also saw another video in which somebody was talking about how, like, you know, some people don't like kids that are written too smart, and I guess I am kind of one of those people, because I think she's supposed to be like maybe 10 or 12. She's young, and sometimes like I struggled because I was like, you know, because at the start she's like talking about princesses, and you have moments where she's like eating ice cream for dinner and whatever, where she does feel like a kid, and then sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if a kid would talk like this. But it kind of, as I went through the book, it kind of went more to the back of my mind, and it didn't really bother me. so this girl, her name is Nina. She comes up to the Count, and I think he used to have like a fancy, one of those curled up mustache type things. And so she'd seen him before, obviously, because she lived there as well with her father. So she comes up she's very confident. She's very, well, you know how kids are, like, they're not afraid of like saying things, and they don't really get nervous or awkward about stuff. They just kind of say whatever's on their mind. So she comes up to the Count and she's like, what happened to your mustache? And that's how they start like their relationship. And that day that, you know, they talk about princesses, because she's like, oh, well, you're a Count, even though he's what they call a former person in the book now. So she's like, oh, have you ever met a princess? And they talk about all these very cute, like childlike things. And so throughout, Nina plays a really important role in helping the Count's mental health, actually, going back to that point, but also in just kind of helping him not feel as trapped. So Nina, I don't know from where, I'm pretty sure they don't say, but from somewhere, Nina ends up getting like this pass key, kind of like a skeleton key essentially, for the hotel. And so she actually knows way more about the hotel than the Count, he's kind of surprised by that, because he's lived here his whole life as well, or at least for a few years. And he thought he knew everything there was to know, but she starts like showing him like the hidden areas and stuff that's locked off to the public. And so one of the things that they do a lot is they sneak into the ballroom. And in the ballroom, there's a lot of meetings about like what's going on outside and the decisions they're trying to make for Russia and all of that stuff. So you do kind of start getting a bit of that, a lot of that information through there, like through those meetings. And it kind of becomes their routine. You know, they're together every day, they eat together, and it's interesting because it doesn't come off as like creepy. Which, you know, in today's day and age, if you saw like a much older man hanging around with like a younger girl, it would probably raise some eyebrows. You would probably be like, that's suspicious. And yes, if you watch Bailey Sarian and you're watching me and you're wondering if that's where that suspicion came from, yes, it is. She is amazing. If you don't know who she is, she does like makeup videos where she talks about true crime. She's great, and she'll be in the description below. You should go subscribe to her if you like true crime and stuff. Now I sound like I'm doing her video. Yeah, so it'd be a little weird to see it now, but you know, in other times, I think life was a bit more relaxed. People weren't so paranoid all the time about, you know, unfortunate things that could happen to their kids. So yeah, and then we don't really ever meet like Nina's dad, so it seems that he's just not very involved. Okay, there we go. He doesn't seem like very involved in her life, other than just like, yeah, he like takes her to school, and of course like they live together. And there's no like mom in the picture, so it's just Nina and her dad. And then the Count, of course, who becomes like her best friend, and it's really cute. I think I was a little worried at first, honestly, because again, I didn't know what the book was about, and this friendship starts off quite early on, and I was like, oh god, I hope this is not like a weird one, especially, you know, having read things like Lolita and Laughter in the Dark. Yeah, so they kind of have that whole like nymph idea that we would call something else today. So I was hoping it didn't go that way, and it doesn't, by the way, because if you're uncomfortable reading that type of stuff, this is not one of those books that's gonna make you feel like weird about it. But I was worried at the start. So they have a really cute friendship where they teach each other different things, and it's really nice to see not just kind of like a smarter child character, but really what I love is that, you know, a lot of times as we grow older, you know, we stop like you don't tend to listen, like adults don't tend to listen to kids and stuff. So it's really interesting that, you know, he doesn't really question her, and even when she like kind of pushes back, they have like a really good dynamic in which they can both learn from each other. And I really like that about the Count, you know, that he he never really comes off like as a jerk. Yeah, so he's not like that, and I think that's really awesome. So yeah, and like I said, they were kind of listening in on these conversations about the country's future, and that actually becomes really, really relevant in Nina's life later on as she grows up. So as time goes by, Nina, you know, she's getting older, and her dad decides to put her in school. And so she's not very excited about it, because she thinks that life, you know, you learn more by doing things and by traveling than by like being stuck behind books. Nina is going to school, which she's not very excited about it, but the Count ends up almost like in a tricking kind of way, ends up showing her like how education can be valuable. So she actually ends up being like really, really smart and really enjoying school. But then of course, you know, this part kind of made me so sad. I guess it kind of also reminded me of my own situations. You know, life goes on, and so friendships don't always last. And so she starts getting like a little busy with school and with her new friends, and she kind of has like a little boyfriend or like a guy that she's into. And so, you know, she doesn't have time for the Count anymore, which sucks because he's so lonely. And like Nina is his only friend, and so suddenly he doesn't have that anymore, and that made me really sad because I really, really liked their friendship. I thought it was so cute, so wholesome. But that friendship kind of fizzles out until eventually Nina actually ends up leaving the hotel. Her dad, I think he has a job somewhere else or something, and so they move away, and that sucked even more because I was like, you know, you built this beautiful relationship between these two characters, and now you're like, yeah, no, she's not here anymore, so good luck. And that takes a toll on the Count and on his like mental health for sure, because he's back to just being alone with himself and alone with his thoughts, and it's not a fun time, you know? Like I said, if you've been there, you get it. So yeah, so the Count loses Nina, and that's really, really, really hard for him. So because he's struggling so much, you know, he kind of feels like purposeless because he doesn't have anything to do. He's just stuck in his room all day doing the same thing over and over and over again for the rest of his life. And when he had Nina, there was a bit of life in the hotel. There was a bit of fun. So even though he doesn't have to, he actually gets a job, which is pretty cool, you know. He just decided to get a job, and so he gets a job at the Boyarsky, that restaurant I was talking about earlier that he always went to. He really loved it. And he was apparently very well known in his family for being really good at like table arrangements. I don't mean like centerpieces. I mean like at arranging like seating arrangements. That's what it's called. So he was really good at like making sure that evenings with his family and guests and stuff went out without a hitch, because he would know like who didn't talk to who had like different interests, who would like end up getting in a fight if you put them next to each other. So he was really good at like avoiding that. Sorry, I'm seeing if this is even, and it's probably not, but I also don't care enough. I mean, I do care, but like I'm not going anywhere, you know? It's just the internet. Forever. Just like the Count. Again, I'm not funny. Why do I think I'm funny? So yeah, so he gets a job at the Boyarsky, and I actually love that he does. He makes a lot of really good friends. There's this guy who like he's teaching French to, and he ends up like meeting an American at a bar, and they become best friends. And he also ends up meeting Emile and Alexi, I want to. So they have a really wholesome friendship, which again, you don't see a lot of like, you do. I don't want to say you don't see a lot of like super wholesome friendships, but you know, it's very cute. They have a really nice dynamic. They're very funny with each other. They're very lighthearted. And the chef Emile, he's known as being like really, really like a tough cookie kind of guy. So he'll like, He was known to like always have his knife in his hand, and he like talk to people with it. So, you know, pretty menacing guy if he's, you know, you're in a kitchen and you messed up an order and the chef is pointing at you with a knife. So, but you know, he has this love for cooking, and they all do. The other person, Andre, is the maitre d', and it's really nice. I think they have a really, really nice friendship, and it's one of those groups that you could like, oh, I wish I could like hang out with them, even though they're not, you know, real characters. They're the kind of characters that you wish you could be friends with. And that's really cool to me. So, but then we have this other character who the Count kind of calls the Bishop. That's his nickname. He's very like serious and like, it's a polite way to say this. He's very arrogant. He thinks he's like better than other people. And so there's like an evening where there's a couple, and they're like the Count assumes they're on a first date, and the guy's like really nervous, and he doesn't know anything about like wine and stuff. The guy, not the Count. The Count knows everything about wine. He's a wine connoisseur. So the guy asked the Bishop for a recommendation, and the Bishop actually just goes like, oh, gives him the most expensive one. And instead the Count kind of steps in and he goes like, oh, actually you should try this one instead, because it goes better with what you're getting. So they go with what the Count suggested, and that kind of starts like a weird like tension between them. And it sucks because the Bishop ends up like constantly being promoted until he ends up like running the hotel. And he's brilliantly written because you hate him so much, but he ends up getting what he deserves, and I'm not gonna spoil that because I want you guys to savor it because it was amazing. But during all this time, there's a lot of censorship that starts happening in Moscow, especially for writers. And so we find this out through Mishka, the Count's like super close friend. So he is kind of freaking out, and he's at the hotel, and he's like, so he's known for like pacing all the time, like anxiously pacing. So sorry to the CDC. So that's kind of his thing, and so he's very anxious. He goes to the hotel, and he's telling the Count like, oh, this stuff is happening, and it's not cool, and I don't know what that's gonna mean for me, because he was a poet. So you kind of get that information, and so after you start realizing that things are going super south in Russia outside of the hotel, Nina comes back actually, but she comes back as like a young woman, and well, she comes back twice, but I'm gonna skip one part because it's not the most relevant. Like I didn't think, I don't know, it wasn't a plot point that really carried a whole lot of weight to it. So we're just gonna ignore that and just go back to the second time when she comes back. So she comes back with her daughter, Sophia. So she had a daughter, and her husband ends up being like taken to Siberia. You can assume for like seditious conspiracy or something like that, espionage or whatever. They say, I just don't remember exactly. It's been a few months since I read this book. So she leaves her daughter with the Count because she's like, I need to go find my husband, I'll come back. And really sadly, she never does, which sucks because again, you get so attached to her character. So it's kind of crummy that, you know, she never comes back. But that's life for you. So yeah, so the Count then is kind of freaking out because he's like, I have a child that I need to be like a parent to, and I don't know how to do this because he didn't have children of his own. He'd never raised kids or anything, so he kind of freaks out, but he actually ends up doing a really, really good job with the help of Emil and with the help of Alexei and Mariana, who's like Marina, not Mariana, Marina, who is like a seamstress at the hotel. She ends up being really, really helpful and like encouraging to the Count in this whole process, which is really nice. I'm trying not to cover my face, I'm sorry. Yeah, and so they basically end up raising her, and in between all this stuff, The Count meets a woman. Her name is Anna Urbanova. She is a famous actress, and they end up kind of starting an affair that lasts for the rest of their lives. It's quite nice that he found someone. And she also takes a part in sort of like raising Sophia. So Sophia actually, as she grows up, she learns that she's really talented in music. So because she's a talented musician, she ends up like going on a trip to, I think, Paris, with the, I think it's like the conservatory or like the orchestra or something. And so this is awesome for the Count. I mean, it's hard for him because he's like, you know, he's raised this little girl and they've built such a beautiful bond from like the difficulties of like when she first got there. And so it's tough for him. It's tough for the Count because he has fallen in love with like this girl. Well, you know, fallen in love like as a father-daughter kind of thing, not like anything weird. And you know, now he has to like say goodbye to her. But this is the perfect opportunity for the Count to sort of plan essentially his escape. It's actually, dang it, I skipped over this. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back real quick and talk to you about something that happened earlier on. So Sophia and the Count, they played a lot of games together. That's how their relationship kind of formed. And so one day while playing, Sophia fell down the stairs and she like hurt her head. So the Count actually, in his panic, he kind of leaves the hotel, goes to like the hospital. He's freaking out, and thankfully like he gets his butt saved thanks to his friends. But I was so stressed during that entire like time because I was like, oh my god, he's gonna get caught and they're gonna like kill him or something, and it's going to be awful. But he does not get caught, and it's great. Yeah, so then Sophia is leaving and they decide to plan an escape for the Count. So they have a really complicated plan, and I don't know if I was just slow to understand this, but I was so confused for a while because I did not see it coming. Although I guess he didn't like try to make it super obvious maybe, until like the plan is actually happening, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then you're excited because he's gonna like not have to be stuck in the hotel forever. So he leaves. I'm sorry, I'm taking forever because I'm really bad at like eyeliner. So yeah, so they get out through a really complicated bunch of hijinks that, again, I don't want to spoil for you because I want you guys to enjoy it because it's a really fun part, and it's when the bishop also gets his just desserts, and it's, I just want you guys to savor it because that was like one of my favorite moments of the book is justice being made. So yeah, so they escape. Dang it. Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna work with it. Yeah, so they get away, and you know, they end up going down to like the place where the bishop had like grown up, which comes up a lot throughout the book. I didn't really talk about it because it kind of really comes up a lot in like B plots with Anna and another character that I didn't even talk about. But they end up going there, and he, you know, lives happily ever after with Anna. What I didn't like here, it's probably my only qualm with it, with the book, was that, you know, you don't really know what happened to Sophia. I kept waiting for her to show up, to like be in there with him or something, and she never was. She just, you know, we see her run away and help her dad escape, and the news cuts to the hotel that she's like disappeared, but then they're like, oh, okay, like it's because she's safe and she's helping like the Count, but you don't really like hear about her, and it sucks because you end up also falling in love with her like you do with Nina, and then you just don't hear from her, and it's unfair. I thought they should have included her, especially because you form such a bond with her, and it's not that you don't form a bond with like Anna's relationship with the Count. because, you know, I liked her. She's a bit of a tough cookie sometimes, but, you know, whatever. We like strong women. But yeah, like I cared more about that relationship than I did about like his relationship with Anna. So that would be probably my only like drawback with the book, was that I really wish we would have gotten like a more complete ending, I guess. Okay, you were probably wondering where the monochrome was gonna come in. It's my lipstick, that's why I was like, I love that I'm saying it's not dramatic and then this was gonna happen. So yeah, do I think this look like entirely goes together? Not really. But I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. So there's a little close up. But yeah, I don't know. You can probably see this better than me like shoving my face in your face, but whatever. Yeah. So long story short, that was my only drawback with the book, was I wasn't crazy about the ending. I didn't think it was bad, but I was a little disappointed. I know some people have said that they did feel like the middle was a bit slow. I didn't experience that personally, but I don't know, maybe that was just me. So maybe that is something to like look out for. But I would definitely recommend this book if you guys want to try this look out. It'd be fun to see pictures, so you can tag me on Instagram. I'll make sure to leave that in the description. And yeah, if you guys have any fun book recommendations or makeup recommendations, definitely put them down in the comments. And yeah, just let me know if you like this format, or if you'd like me to talk more about the makeup, or if you'd like for me to do like 2 separate things, like makeup videos one day and then like book videos a different day. Yeah, just let me know what you guys would like to see. If you have any books you really want me to do, I can definitely do that. I think next week I want to discuss The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. I don't know what I'm gonna do for that look yet, because the cover doesn't really have a whole lot of color. It's actually behind me. You might actually be able to see it. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about that, but yeah, that is next week. So hopefully I'll see you guys. I haven't decided really when I want to upload it, probably Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Yeah, but I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, to subscribe, and just let me know whatever you want in the comments. And I will see you guys later. Bye!